Spokane, Spokane, Spokane. Man.
Thank you, Janet Shaw.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today, we're going to be speaking about the Spokane Indians, who play in Eastern Washington. They're the High A affiliate of the Colorado Rockies. Later on in this episode, I'll be speaking with Jason Klein of Brandiose, the design firm that created not only their primary brand, but many of their alternates as well. And I'll be speaking, of course, with Dan Simon with one of his Studio Simon Stumpers. Right now, I am so pleased to welcome to the Baseball by Design podcast Otto Klein, who is the Senior Vice President and part owner for the Spokane Indians. Otto, hello, how are you doing?
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for hopping on the podcast to talk about the Spokane Indians. This is such a great story in minor league baseball, and a really attractive brand. But it's a lot more than that. It's a really interesting story, and I'm so glad to be sharing it here. I do have to say that Eric Mertens, who is obviously with the Tri-City Dust Devils, when I put out a call for, hey, what team should I feature on the podcast, his first response was Spokane Indians. It's probably because I've already done the Tri-City Dust Devils, but obviously, this is the team that people really enjoy this story once they get to hear it. So I am going to start with a really basic question, which is how come a team in Spokane, Washington, Eastern Washington, near my daughter's college, she goes to school at Gonzaga University.
Oh, good.
So I'm familiar with that part of the country.
Okay.
Why are the Spokane Indians called the Spokane Indians?
Well, it's really been this way, and that's one of the great things about minor league baseball and in some of these communities. It just dates back so long, right? And the Indians are no exception. So 1903 is really where the name started to come about in printed pieces that we've been able to find and historical research and everything there. We also heard it had a few different names even prior to that, but the Indians have been here since 1903, and that's really been what this region has known. Decades and decades and generations have grown up with their community baseball team being the Spokane Indians.
With the name Indians, right? Like the elephant in the room is, we were talking sort of before we started here. There are teams that use Native American branding and imagery in a way that, isn't ideal. And the Spokane Indians are not one of those teams. The Spokane Indians, the way you all work with the local community, the way you all came about the name, the way the imagery that you use in your logo, you work very closely with the Spokane Tribe of Indians. And so I want to sort of get that out there first as part of this conversation. How is it that that you work with the community, and why is that so important to you as a team?
Well, yeah, and I do think that is important, and I appreciate your comments on that. We've really had a good working relationship with the tribe for a long time, but it really became in earnest, or more in earnest, in 2006 when we wanted to do a rebrand for the team itself. And the Indians, like many other teams in sports who have been here for a long time, they've seen different generations of their logo, if you will. And it was time in 2006 when we really needed to look at our identity. And when we did that, we wanted to work with the tribe. And so we reached out. And I think that's the first thing, is we asked. And we set up a meeting. We talked to them. They were wonderful and so appreciative of being honored in this way. And so we worked together in a collaboration to get that done. And so it really started in 2006 with our primary logo. And if you look at our logo, you'll notice that we have one logo of our primary identity. The S and the Spokane Indians and the incorporation of the feather. We changed our colors a little bit at that time as well. We used to be red, white, and blue. Now we added tan instead of the white, and then light blue, just for some historical colors, if you will. And it really worked. And we have one logo, but it's in two different languages. We have it in English, and we also have it in Salish. And that's something that they really appreciated as well. And we use the Salish version of the logo, which is their primary dialect of the Spokane Tribe of Indians, is Salish. We use that most of the time.
And that Salish version of the logo actually has a place in baseball's Hall of Fame, which I think is really spectacular for this team. Can you tell me about the appearance of the Spokane Indians uniform in the Hall of Fame?
Yes, and one of the things after we did the logo rebrand, um, and the direct translation is really interesting as well for in the Salish version. They don't have a word for baseball team, right?
Uh-huh.
So what we've been told is it's group of people.
Mm.
Group of people is part of it, and then Spokane has its own alliteration as well. So it's been really fun, and as the um, as the relationship continued to grow, and we meet with the tribe regularly. Probably I meet with tribal council twice a year. We have a great relationship. We talk about all types of different issues on both sides. And in 2014, one of the things we said in some previous meetings to that, they said, our language is dying. Salish is a language that is probably spoken fluently at that time by about 12 members of their tribe. And they were working and have been working feverishly to put that logo onto paper and put that language onto paper and to speak it more often and teach new generations of Salish speakers. And so we said, well, how can we help? And they said, well, if you could help us bring awareness to it somehow. And we said, well, great. What if we put Salish on the front of our uniform? We'd be the first team in history with a native language on the front of our uniform. And it always said Spokane before, or it said Indians. And we wanted to do it in Salish, hence the jersey, and hence why it gained some recognition. But it wasn't about being in the Hall of Fame, and it wasn't about selling more uniforms. It was about bringing awareness and a conversation to a language. And I think that when you do that, good things will follow. Our intent was there. It was the right thing to do, and hence now we've received some accolades from it. But it really has created a conversation.
Yeah, and it's I have a photo in that Sports Logos article. There's a photo of that uniform, and it's really beautiful. That the representation of that written language is really beautiful, and just so cool that for the first time a written native language on a baseball uniform, to see that recognized in the Hall of Fame is very cool. I want to say too, as we're talking about this, that when in 2006 you unveiled the new logo, that the tribe issued a statement, and I'm just going to read that here. I don't often read aloud on the podcast, but I want to read the statement that they released. They said, the Spokane Tribal Council believes that the Spokane Indians baseball management team is taking a lead role in respecting the tribe's native culture and people by collaborating in the design of their new logo. The Spokane Tribe and Culture Committee hope other Indian-named organizations across the country keep this groundbreaking concept in mind with their own neighboring Indian tribes. So, this is obviously not just us here having a conversation about that, but that, that is a powerful statement from them, saying that this example of how to work with the local community, if you're going to use Native American imagery and branding for a baseball team, is that it's powerful for that to come from the tribe itself. One of the things that I know you do, and I have to say, like I said, my daughter goes to Gonzaga, and I have not timed either picking her up or dropping her off from school with a game yet, and I'm working really hard to make that happen this year. But one of my understandings is that at the ballpark itself, there are panels, educational panels about about the local community, where if you're a fan at a game, you can actually learn about the community that the team is named for.
Absolutely. And I think that there's so many different avenues that this partnership has, and so many different legs and ways that it's gone down. It's not just about, hey, let's develop our primary logo and move on. It has so much more to do with the continuing relationship. And one of the things that we said is that we wanted to make sure that that not only is the logo a primary centerpiece and the jerseys and everything else, but what else can we do in the stadium? And so we have historical markers that are out on the Hall of Fame Plaza that tell the story of the Spokane tribe. And talking about tribal members and tribal elders and so forth. The imagery in the ballpark is really important to us as well. For example, if you were to come in the stadium, if you were to go to our team store and signage on the outside that it's written both in English and in Salish. We've done that with several of our different signs, whether it's the restrooms or the concessions or the team store or wayfinding, different things that we've done. We try to incorporate the language. We have a zero waste campaign that we didn't want to just do a normal recycling logo. We wanted to do one that had a tribal emphasis to it. And I think that that's all about imagery. And I think there's a big difference between name and imagery with sports teams. And we were able to accomplish both in a respectful and inclusive way with the tribe. And I think that sometimes that can be missed, but every team has their own situation. And for us, I know that our partnership with the tribe has been really successful, and imagery in the stadium is also a big part of it. And the incorporation of the feather, different things that we've done.
Well, I was going to ask you about this feather in particular, because I already mentioned that the artwork that it is based on is from a member of the Spokane tribe named George Flett, but that there were other possibilities, and there's a reason that you all landed on the feather as compared to lots of other possibilities that might have ended up being the logo. How come it was that you ended up on the feather?
Well, when we first met with the tribe and we talked about imagery, they said, well, the things that are important to us can, some of the things that we could incorporate that we'd like to suggest would be maybe the river and the eagle and the wolf and the coyote and different things, pieces that were important to them. We said, well, we can't do everything, but let's see if we can add a flair to it. And so the eagle feather is really what that identifying mark has been. And we both loved it. I mean, it needs to say baseball, right? It needs to say who we are as an organization. But then that native touch was the one that we kind of settled on.
And it's understated and it's respectable. And I think that shines through right away. One of the identities that you all have that is less understated, it's a much brighter colors and a really fun logo, derives from your Red Band Rally campaign. And this is more than just an alternate logo. This is a campaign that benefits the local community and is involved in some environmental initiatives and also benefits the Spokane tribe. Can you tell me what is the Red Band Rally campaign and the alternate identity that goes with it?
Yes, this has been a great one for us, and we really love it. And well, we came up with the concept when we were really thinking about an alternate identity and a mascot and some other things. And we said, well, what are some of the things that would be important to us? What would be some things that were important to the tribe? And really in this community, right through the heart of downtown and this region is the Spokane River. And one of the things that we identified in the river that is native to this area is the native red band rainbow trout. And they're only found in certain places in the world. And it's a brilliant colored rainbow trout with this brilliant red stripe across it. And we were able to think about that. And when we approached the tribe and said, hey, what does this mean to you? What does this fish mean to you? And they said very clearly, look, the Spokane River used to have salmon, and that is what we would love to have return and that we work towards every day. But also existing in the river is the native red band rainbow trout. And it's one of the first foods of the Spokane Tribe of Indians. And so when we looked into it further and further and had discussions, we saw the meaning between the tribe and the red band rainbow trout. And we have this campaign that honors that, worked with our friends at Brandiose to develop this unique logo, and it became a hat. And then it has worked into a mascot and headbands and red band headbands that people put on at the end of the game. It's a rally mascot for us. And it is a dual thing. I mean, it's really about the team rallying for success in late innings, but also rallying to fight for the habitat in the Spokane River and raise funds for Spokane River habitat. And that's what we've been able to do.
It's obvious that that the team has made a really intentional decision to serve the community and and not just, you know, working with the local tribe, but the community at large, right? Like, and you don't see a ton of minor league baseball teams that are directly involved with funding conservation efforts, or, you know, or
Mhm.
educational campaigns. So I'm curious about just that decision from an organizational standpoint. Like, what informs that decision to play that role in your community instead of just being a baseball team?
You know, yeah, it has been a conscious decision. And I think one of the things that we really like is we're a mature business. We like to do things that are intentional and with depth. And when we do things like that, and how we serve the community, look, we do. We're the community's baseball team. We say that all the time, and we mean it. And in fact, Major League Baseball awarded us the MILB Community Leaders Award this past year. Out of 120 minor league baseball teams, we were voted #1, and that's really because of all the different efforts that we do. We have a zero waste campaign that we do with the city of Spokane. We have the Red Band campaign, environmental issues. You know, we have our partnership with the Spokane Tribe, a couple new ones that we're working on, and I think that that's it, you know, does how many tickets does it sell? Yes, we could probably say there's some transferable things, but it really is about serving the community and being broader than just selling tickets and sodas and hot dogs, right? And we do hospital visits like most teams do. I think minor league baseball does a great job of serving their local community, and we wanted to be one of the ones that do the right thing, and some of the accolades have come from it. So while it's a simple question, it takes effort and it takes money, it takes resources, it takes time. We have a full-time person on our staff that helps us oversee all our campaigns, and you know, whether it's with our youth baseball league or you know, all these different things, we think that it's just good business.
I have to ask you, there's one other identity before I let you go here that has been unveiled since we wrote this article on sportslogos.net. It features a sort of cartoon airplane with both airplane wings, but also, you know, like feathered wings. And
Mhm.
I have to admit, I apologize for this. I'm not familiar with what that alternate brand is. What is that brand that I'm looking at there?
Yeah, so that brand is part of our Operation Fly Together campaign. And so here in Spokane, we have just outside of Spokane, there's a Air Force Base, and it's called Fairchild Air Force Base. And the primary function of the Air Force Base is the KC-135 tanker, and that is the giant airplane that refuels jets in the sky. Okay, so
Okay.
think of a flying gas tank that is, you know, at 20,000 feet, and jets pull up behind it and it refuels them in midair. And that is the primary function of the base. They do it all around the world.
Yeah.
And so when we met with the Air Force Base and with the Fairchild, we said, hey, how can we work together? And we have this concept. And the concept was celebrating the KC-135 tanker.
Mhm.
And so Casey, it became a new mascot here, the hat, the logo. And we signed the first marketing relationship in the history of sports with an Air Force, with the Air Force. Now, I think a lot of teams always do honor on veterans and in their local community and do armed forces appreciation, everything else. Well, this is a reciprocal relationship that we have with the Air Force, that we can use their brand and identity in conjunction with the team. And we did it in this way. And so again, it is for a purpose. It is for with depth, but it also raises money from the funds to help our local veterans. And we've been able to do some great things.
Amazing. And is that brand on field or is it
Yeah, the jersey and the hat have been approved and part of our on-field identity.
fantastic?
Yeah.
This is so much fun for me to talk about, and I so appreciate you taking the time to talk about this. I kept you longer than I said I was going to, so I apologize for that. But what a great story to be able to share. Thank you so much for all that you do and for coming on the podcast to tell the story.
Yeah, my pleasure. Appreciate it.
Otto, where can people find the team and all of these great merchandise items online or on social media?
Yeah, of course, at SpokaneIndians.com, everything is there, and you can learn about the team and our relationship with the tribe and all of our different campaigns, and all the schedule and everything else is there. So please take a look around, and I think you'll find something that you like.
Well, I hope to get there and take in a game this year if I can make it work with my daughter's pick up and drop off schedule. Otto, thanks again, and hopefully I'll see you at the ballpark.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so pleased to welcome back my friend Jason Klein of Brandiose to the podcast. Jason, how you doing?
Great. Man, this is going to be a good one.
You guys are so busy all the time. It is so much fun to get to talk to you about all the work that you've done. This Spokane Indians brand, there's a new brand that you created for them, the King Carl campaign. But before we get to King Carl, I just wanted to ask you, sort of in general, one of the things about Spokane is how important it is to them to work with their community to do right socially, to be conscientious about the decisions that they make.
Yeah.
For you as a designer, you have to buy into that. You have to be part of that. I know that you worked with the community members to talk about what's the appropriate iconography, what's appropriate for this brand. What's that process like for you as a designer to make sure that you're paying proper tribute to the community?
Yeah. I mean, this is one of my favorite stories. We, I think it was maybe 15 years ago, we got a call, and the Spokane Indians were like, "Hey, we'd love to like rebrand and, come up with some new looks." And we were like, "Oh, this sounds great." So we flew up there, and they said, "We have one rule. We cannot touch the Native American thing, right? Like no Native American anything, right?"
Right.
And so we were like, "Okay, cool." And so we started talking about, so how did you guys, are you guys were you guys originally like a Cleveland Indians affiliate? And they laughed like, no. We're like way before the Cleveland Indians. And I was like, "Oh, really?" And they're like, "Yeah, we were named after the Spokane Tribe of Indians." And I'm like, "The Spokane Tribe?" They're like, "Yeah, it's a local Native American tribe." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, I kind of like, Casey and I looked at each other like, "Are they still sort of, is like, it's still a thing?" They're like, "Oh, of course. Yeah. Like we're like good friends with them." And so this is where like the light bulb goes off in our head. And we were like, well, could we like go collaborate with them? And they're kind of like, "Well, we never really thought of that." And you have to understand, like up until this point, the story of, the Native American approach in the United States was really two different directions. One was like, "Oh my gosh, like they were like the red men. Now we're going to be like the red storm, like we're going to change it, like just absolutely run as far as we can from the concept." And then the second approach was sort of the Redskins, which is like, we're just going to sort of thumb our noses to the world and say, well, we don't care what you think.
Yeah.
And then there was this third option, which had never been done before in professional baseball. You see it with the Seminole tribe and the Florida State Seminoles. But this idea of partnership, this idea of collaboration, that if you are the subject matter of the identity, that it's your voice that matters. Like it's your story to tell. Let's partner and tell your story. So they called up the elders, and the elders were like, "Yeah, that sounds great. Why don't you guys come up to the reservation and sit down and we'll talk about this process?" So we literally got in the mascot mobile, drove up the mountain, met with the elders. They have an amazing building. It's gorgeous. And we sat down, and we were really excited. We're like, "Oh man, we do something with a salmon, or do something." They have these white horses and a lot of their imagery. And they're like, "Yeah, you know what? We really feel comfortable with the eagle feather." And it's a symbol of partnership and togetherness. And so we really would like you guys to do that. And they had a artist who passed away named George Flett, who is a tribal artist. And he was very instrumental in sort of inspiring some of the imagery. And of course, on our end, like we had to make sure that we're designing limited color palette for sports and make sure it's can be reproduced and done in embroidery. So as we're leaving, there was language on the wall that kind of like, I'd never seen it before. It kind of like, the only thing I could sort of describe it as like Russian to me. as I'm walking out, and I'm like, what's this? And they're like, oh, this is Salish. This is our language. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I said, is this, like, does everybody speak? And they're like, no. There's only like a handful of members in the tribe who can speak and write. And so I was like, do you think we could get this translated, Spokane, or like, Spokane Indians baseball club into Salish? They kind of like looked at you like, oh, wow, I got it. Like, we can do like Spokane makes that's easy, but like, thousands of years old, like, how do you take baseball club, right? And it was sort of, I think the word, and I could be mistaken, but my understanding was it was sort of like community gathering / competition / sort of togetherness. That was sort of the like translation. And I was like, that's perfect. So we started working on the logos, the uniforms. It has the eagle feather. And the first year we put Spokane and Salish on, I think it was an alternate jersey. And the sleeve patch had Spokane Indians Baseball Club in Salish, and it blew up. Yeah. Like, fans were like, this is fantastic. We love this. And then within a year, they got rid of all of the English on all the uniforms and became the first, I think, as we know, the first professional baseball team in America to have a Native American language 100% full time. And the fans like went wild. They loved it. One of the other things too is like here in San Diego, where our studio is, we're right, on the border with Mexico. So we have a lot of Spanish speakers in San Diego. So you'll see a lot of signs that are both in English and Spanish. And when you go to the baseball stadium in Spokane, they not only have like English, but everything is translated into Salish underneath. Yeah. And as I mentioned before, there's only like 5 people. So if you have to think about the small percentage of those in Spokane community who are of tribal ancestry, right? And then even a smaller slice of that, a handful of people who can speak and write the language. Why would you ever in a baseball stadium write in a language that no one can understand? But the cool thing about it is it becomes a conversation starter, just like all these brands where locals want to learn more and they see it. And the results of it have been incredible. The Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown called up and they said, we want this in our permanent collection. Could you ship us the jersey? So that is in the permanent collection of the Hall of Fame. There's been stories across newspapers across America. New York Times did a feature on it, full page feature in the sports section. And one of the things that makes me most proud of this is the tribal elders said, thank you so much for allowing us to have our story told. They said, because you are a baseball team and the role of sports in American culture, our tribe is getting way more attention and our story is being told in a way that we couldn't do on our own. And everybody, I always remind folks when we have these kind of conversations, the opposite of bad representation isn't no representation. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We shouldn't like run under our desks, put something out there, maybe have, Tom Hanks introduce it. So, everybody loves Tom Hanks. He's America's, everybody loves Tom Hanks. If he introduces it, like, we shouldn't run from these stories that are part of the American experience. Now I always put the caveat out there. If whether a school, a college, a university, a pro sports team, yeah, absolutely go to your local tribe or tribal community and say, hey, we really like to tell your story. Yeah. Could we do this? Now they are the subject matter. And if they say, well, hey, we just don't, it's just not of interest to us. Okay, great. I understand. Like, you're the subject matter. If you're not interested, okay, we're not going to go down this path. But if you are interested, this is an incredible opportunity for storytelling in the local community, creating something that is unfortunately not common. So Salish is not common. It gets everybody in Spokane talking. It gets minor league baseball talking, right? It's like, why is Spokane's jerseys not written in English, right? So And the tribe loves that because it's a great American story that we get to tell. So I'm super thrilled to be a part of that process.
Well, I was actually just last weekend at a game in Spokane, and it was so cool to see it there. And it was I have to say I met with Otto Klein, the team owner, and
Yeah.
their media guy, Bud. And it was so great. We talked about the work that you all have done with them. I want to I want to let you get out of here, but I also want to ask you before I let you go on the Spokane Indians here. When I spoke with Otto for this episode, the King Carl brand had not been unveiled yet. And
Yeah.
so for this podcast episode, we have not talked yet about the King Carl brand. That's such a cool story, right? Like, it was unveiled in a Black community paper the day before it was
Yeah.
embargo was released for the rest of the community. Tell the story of the King Carl campaign, please.
Yeah, years ago, minor league baseball introduced the Copa program, which was to celebrate a lot of the Latin American stories in baseball in our communities. It was a great opportunity to celebrate the Latin American impact on America and also around the world. And one of the things that we thought was, there's other great stories of whether it's the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League and women's impact in America, women's impact in baseball, but also the African-American impact in baseball. We have the Negro Leagues. We have a lot of that's being celebrated through the Nines program that MLB is partnering with minor league baseball teams. But, if you didn't have if you weren't in Kansas City and had the Monarchs or the New York Black Yankees, you didn't have these teams in your community. It's like, well, we didn't have a Negro League team. We didn't have what can we do to celebrate? And so I had pitched Otto. I said, could we do something that was like Copa, but for the African-American community? And he goes, I got the perfect guy. And I said, okay, great. He said, he introduced King Carl, who is a famous boxer in the community. He obviously was a part of the civil rights program. And I thought, like, this is a great story to tell. So we, created this brand, the King Carls, to celebrate his impact in the community, his impact in sports in Spokane. And it was so fun. I loved it. I heard his family was involved. It's just really, really cool.
Well, and the thing the team does that I love so much is that they, they put out a graphic that really highlights all of the elements that you included in this brand. It's a boxing glove. There's a crown because he's King Carl. The colors are drawn from Black History Month. There's a tassel because he was a scholar. The glove is in the shape of a clenched fist for Black Power. So it was so cool to see that brand walking around while I was there at the game. And I'm so glad to have gotten to talk to you about that, because it is a very cool brand and continues Spokane's tradition of just being on it in a great way, culturally, socially, politically. They do great work.
Yeah. And I think, I hope we see more of it, because we have, Jackie Robinson Day. We have the celebration of the Negro Leagues, and a lot of minor league clubs are adopting them for the Nines program. But there are so many stories, not just of African-American players breaking the color barrier in baseball, but also, breaking the color barrier in other parts of our society. And I think that it's really important, whether it's Carl, whether it's Harriet Tubman, whether it's Rosa Parks, that we continue to tell those stories and find opportunities to celebrate them, and kind of like we're doing with Copa.
Well, it's a very cool brand telling the story of a really important civil rights leader, and it's a story that's new to me because of and I learned about it because of this brand. So
Love
great,
it.
great work by you guys. Jason, thank you so much. Brandiose can be found on all the socials at Brandiose and online at brandiose.com. Jason, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Can't wait.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. We are here with Dan Simon of Studio Simon, designer extraordinaire, who has created so much joy for minor league baseball fans over the decades, and certainly in recent months, with some really fun brands out there that have taken the minor league baseball world by storm. So much fun. Such an honor for me to have Dan on the podcast every single week. Dan Simon, good morning. How are you?
How can I not be fantastic after that hyperbolic introduction?
It's the Hyper Bowl every week here on the Baseball by Design podcast. We're talking about the Spokane Indians today. This is a really terrific brand. I finally got out to Spokane to see a game. My daughter is at Gonzaga, and I've been there several times, but only very recently finally got to a game there. Terrific ballpark and a terrific story behind this brand. So I look forward to seeing where we go today on Studio Simon Stumpers.
Knowing that your daughter, Olivia,
Mm-hmm.
goes to school at Gonzaga in Spokane,
Mhm.
and knowing that you've been there a number of times, I figured you would have been to a game by now. So you have just confirmed that to be true.
Yes.
And given that, you better get this one right because it regards something that it's in regard to something that you would have seen at a game. So let's see if you were paying attention.
All right. You know, I hate when you do this, when when you tell me I should get one right, because usually Studio Simon Stumpers are pressure free, but now there's pressure.
There sure is. Okay, so the Spokane Indians have several mascots. Otto, who was introduced in 1993, is the longest tenured Spokane Indians mascot, but they have 3 others. So our Studio Simon Stumper today asks, which of the following is the name of one of those other mascots? Is it A, Mel Otter, B, Spike Trout, or C, Doris the Spokanosaurus?
I can confirm with actual knowledge that it is Doris the Spokanosaurus, though those other ones are quite funny. So yes, actual human knowledge. In fact, I even have a Doris ice cream helmet. So I'm going to go C, final answer. No sussing necessary.
And you are correct, sir. So despite the pressure that we placed on your shoulders that prefaced the question, you came through in flying colors. Doris the Spokanosaurus is indeed one of their mascots. Otto, the aforementioned Otto, he is also a Spokanosaurus. When he is introduced at the beginning of each game, he is brought out to the song Wild Thing by the Trogs. Now, Doris, who was introduced in 2011, enters to Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. They also, even though they don't have a mascot named Spike Trout, which is the one I named, they do have a trout mascot, Ribby the Red Band Trout, introduced in 2017. He appears in the 7th inning of each game, accompanied by Barracuda by Heart. And their last mascot is AC the Stratotanker. Now, a Stratotanker is a tanker aircraft that has provided aerial refueling support to the Air Force, Navy, and Marines for over 60 years. This mascot is done in partnership with nearby Fairchild Air Force Base. Now, to the best of my abilities in trying to find what musical accompaniment KC, the Stratotanker, comes out to, I could not find any information on that. So I will ask you if you have any suggestions for what song Tanker should come out to.
Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota by Weird Al Yankovic.
Hopefully these Stumper episodes will appear in the chronological order in which they were recorded, so people will get that reference.
It'll be a little bit of a deep cut if people are paying attention. I hope people are paying attention. So
that's what they call a callback.
It is a callback. Absolutely. Let's see. I'm going to say, I think Stonehenge by Spinal Tap.
How does that relate to KC the Stratotanker?
No, I'm just thinking of something that captures the vibe of a big old tanker just lumbering out onto the field.
Well, how about something flying related?
Fly Like an Eagle.
Fly Like an Eagle, Steve Miller Band.
Yeah.
Come Fly With Me, Frank Sinatra.
Mhm.
How about the theme from Rocky, Gonna Fly Now?
No, that's cultural appropriation. That's only for Philadelphia.
Okay, and then REO Speedwagon would like to weigh in with Time for Me to Fly. So Spokane front office, if you're listening and you don't already have musical accompaniment to Casey's entrance to your games, there were some suggestions, and I won't take credit for it, but I would enjoy knowing that maybe you listened and you're doing that.
What about anything by Jefferson Airplane? What about Mystery Plane or Aeroplane?
Big Old Jet Airliner. Another Steve Miller song. Okay, enough about that.
Dan, thank you as always for coming on and sharing your knowledge, sharing your wit and your wisdom, and for being a part of the Baseball by Design podcast. I certainly appreciate it. And we will see you once again next week.
I appreciate doing this segment with you every week. So thank you for your appreciation. I appreciate you, and I will see you next week.
All right, go find Dan at studiosimon.net and on Instagram at studio_Simon. See you next week.